You're listening to Music Tectonics.
Welcome back to Music Tectonics, where we go beneath the surface of music and tech. I'm your host, Dmitri. I'm also the founder and CEO of Rock, Paper, Scissors, the PR and marketing firm that specializes in music innovation. And today we've got a chock-full episode for you. We'll kick off with our Rock, Paper Scanner news headlines and roundup for you. We've got a great interview from the godmother of the future, Cathy Hackl, also from the Adweek Tech Magic podcast. She's great. We're going to hear a lot about where things are going in terms of the immersive web, mixed reality, and so forth. I'm excited for you to hear what Cathy has to share. I think there'll be some stuff that blows your mind. It blew my mind when I talked to her. We'll also have a startup session with Music Tectonics conference regular James Hill from Ever FM. I can't believe what he's working on, how every time you listen to a song, it could be different. It's going to be a great episode. I'm so glad you're here. Here we go.
Rock, Paper, Scanner.
I'm here with our Chief Strategy Officer, Tristra New Year Yeager, for our weekly dive into the Rock Paper Scanner, our newsletter that we put together scanning all the interesting things happening in music tech and music innovation. And happy to have you here again, Tristra.
Hey, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me back.
Of course. And I've got a few headlines I just want to share that came out of the Friday newsletter. And then let's dive into some articles specifically. I asked Tristra to pick one. I picked one. But first, just a couple of headlines just to point out. From Music Business Worldwide, Daniel Tenser wrote an article titled, "Using Copyrighted Content to Train AI Without Permission is Not Fair Use. U.S. Court Rules in Thomson Reuters Case." It's not a music case, but it's important to kind of see how the courts are deciding what's going on with fair use in training for AI. That will impact the music industry. So interesting to see there, assuming the courts still have power in the future of America. The second article that I just wanted to pull out was kind of interesting from The Verge. YouTube is now even bigger on TVs than phones. And last week, Tristan and I talked about the growth of YouTube's income and continuing to grow. But it's interesting to see that it's also transferring over to set boxes in home beyond what probably people originally thought as well. So that's kind of interesting that televisions are still relevant. And the third headline that I just wanted to share from Music Week by Andre Payne is Riot Squad. Global game fandom is reinventing the soundtrack. Interesting partnership with Virgin Music around the Netflix series Arcane and kind of the impact of that collaboration, sort of a transmedia thing as well, where Riot Games is involved as well. So just there's all sorts of articles across industry revenue, big picture thinking, kind of music industry flavor and music innovation flavor and so forth. So a few headlines I wanted to share there. But Tristra, you picked out an article we could dive in a little bit deeper. Which was the article you picked out?
Well, I was looking at something that I'm curious how this will apply to the music innovation space. And I'll read the title. It's from 404 Media. Microsoft study finds AI makes human cognition, quote, atrophied and unprepared. Ouch. And basically, this study is confirming for generative AI what's been known for many, many years about automation in general. And that is that if people become very used to relying on automation, they may not be able to respond in creative ways to outlier situations. So this is, for instance, it's been studied in pilots. It's a very, very important skill to have if you're a pilot, to suddenly be able to respond and, say, land a plane under very different non-atypical conditions. So, however, there are other places where a lack of cognitive creativity could be could be crucial, whether we're talking about nurses or teachers, and the research uses those two examples. But overall, it points to an over-reliance on generative AI leading to less creativity in the responses from people who are using it regularly. And so I want to throw this out there just so that we can all be aware as people who are in a creative industry. And a lot of our roles require at least responding in a creative way to inputs that that this is something to keep in mind, that maybe before you decide that you want to turn a lot of your writing tasks over to ChatGPT, you want to think about whether that is going to serve you best. Is that really in the long run the most efficient way to achieve your goals if part of your goal is creativity? So anyway, I just thought that research was
and
really
keeping your mind fresh too, right?
Yeah.
And being able to continue to complete higher level functions over time. If you start outsourcing certain types of thinking, you stop using those muscles, and you're giving that control, that creative control, that executive functioning control over to artificial intelligence. You actually lose the muscle, right? You start to rely on other things to take over. And maybe there's some new higher level thinking we'll find out once we can outsource more of those things.
In theory, but I think what this research is pointing to is that if we outsource rote tasks of a certain kind to AI solely, we may actually be unable to perform higher level cognitive tasks. It's just like if you're a high level dancer and you lie on the couch for 3 weeks and watch movies and eat potato chips, you may find yourself getting up and not being able to do the super nuanced and highly technical dance moves you used to be able to do. I don't know if that's a good metaphor or not, but I was just really
it's a great
research.
metaphor.
Yeah, and I think creative people need to be thinking about this.
Well, and as you were talking about this, I was imagining, could there be some adjustment in how the interface works for different generative AI, such as maybe the AI gives you background information about what they've done, what their sources were. Oh, heaven forbid they admit what their sources are, but maybe some like context around their sources, like, oh, we chose to use this for the aesthetic because in this moment in history, this was a trend in thought or philosophy, or we chose to use these timbres to express this thing. So there's a little bit of like, could it provide more context that helps you continue that higher level thing? But there also could be a little bit of a learning or a gamification or a testing tool to say, did you notice we did this? What philosopher was that influenced by, or what writer, or where you're like, oh, I'm not just using that context, but I'm actually learning about it so that I can, my brain's keeping up with you, sort of.
That's a really interesting point. I also want to point to former GPT models, for example, like GPT-2 was kind of bad, and that was actually more useful if you wanted to be creative. It would really nutty stuff in there that didn't make any sense. It was like talking to an absurdist poet from like the early 20th century sometimes, and you could get super inspired. So maybe, hey, model builders, make your models weirder, and you'll actually be great for creative inspiration.
That's how things like antibiotics were invented, with mold or cheese or fermented drinks or something. Go. But yeah. All right, we got time just to touch briefly on one article I picked out. I always follow what Media Research is up to, and they've got a diverse group of writers now. It's not just the Mark Mulligan show anymore. A writer I had not been tracking, Olivia Jones, wrote a piece called Bringing Fandom to Life, The Rise of IRL Superfan Experiences. So not really news so much, but more like that horizon scanning, what's coming up. She was sort of picking up on the fandom events in Asia, in the East, where the fan feels closer to the artist, oftentimes without the artist present or involved, and thinking of these as ways to extend the in-person engagement with fans, but also monetization. So she includes examples like Geffen Records partnering with event organizers to throw official fan club nights, such as Olivia Rodrigo's Guts album release party. Hybe pioneered the City Project, which consists of citywide festivals in places like Tokyo or Jakarta, themed around particular artists, Hybe artists, and coinciding with their concerts, but maybe it's in addition to. Hybe expanded on that with BTS in the city Las Vegas, and so forth. And in some of these cases, the artist wasn't there. There's also a Taylor Swift Spotify experience. This is Taylor Swift, a Spotify playlist experience in person, an exhibition around, they say the themes like a love letter to what it means to be a Taylor Swift fan. So Just interesting to think a little bit about other ways that fans and super fans can get engaged with artists, maybe spend some money to support the artist slash the IP without the artist having to do more. And there's, so that was kind of the theme there.
I was just going to throw in the BTS example. The Army folks really got into all sorts of local businesses in Las Vegas, like going to a certain donut shop or going to certain places that had really almost nothing to do with BTS or their music. So it became this whole way of building fan-driven cultural moments around. It was just an excuse for fans to come up with fun things to do together.
Right.
Yeah,
Super cool.
Pretty interesting.
There were a couple stats in the article to kind of back up the need for this. According to Polestar, average ticket prices have increased 41% globally since 2019, with the average ticket costing $135.92 last year.
Yeah.
Also, from their own live music fan study with Media and I think Bands in Town, 20% of the Bands in Town users surveyed were, quote, live super fans who spent above average time and money on concerts, but 31% did not spend much and money at all and rarely attended concerts, making up the largest segment of the sample for that study. Point being, there's a variety of levels at which you could serve the superfan with these in-person experiences, even if the artist isn't there. So
amazing.
Just cool to track other ways in which the overall music IP value can grow in the experience world. Anyway, Trisha, as always, super fun scanning horizons with you. Thanks for doing the rock, paper scanner with me again this week.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Now for our feature interview.
Today's feature is with the godmother of the future. She also specializes in the immersive web. I love getting the chance to bring in superstars from other verticals, other industries, and becoming their student for a half hour. Cathy Hackl is a globally recognized tech and gaming exec, futurist, speaker. She's focused on spatial computing, virtual worlds, augmented reality, AI, gaming strategy. She's the co-CEO of Future Dynamics, a spatial computing and AI solutions company, and she's a top tech voice on LinkedIn. I know because I follow her. Hackl has worked at Amazon Web Services, Magic Leap, and HTC Vive, and she's worked with companies like Nike, Ralph Lauren, Walmart, Louis Vuitton, Clinique on their emerging tech and gaming journeys. She's one of Ad Age's leading women of 2023, was featured on the cover of Forbes LATAM's 100 Most Powerful Women 2023 issue, and she's on the Vogue Business 100 Innovators inaugural list. She also hosts, check this out, Adweek's highly successful Tech Magic podcast. Cathy, welcome to the show.
I am so thrilled to be here.
Yeah, this is fun. Thanks for making the time. I am really excited just to learn from you, and I want to dive right in. So, what's the state of the immersive internet, formerly known as the metaverse and VR and ... Is this still a thing, and how do we know?
Yeah, I mean, as much as people have a lot of baggage around the word metaverse, the reality is that the web as we know it continues to expand, computing continues to change. I have seen people move away from the term metaverse and use spatial web. There's spatial internet, spatial web. So I think there is an evolution there in the terms that we use. You know, just like the word information superhighway was not what we call the internet nowadays. I think there is going to be an evolution there on the term, but I am a firm believer that we're still working on it. It is something that is still being created. Whether we use the term or not, that to me is irrelevant. Even though I've been called used godmother of the future, which is kind of a more recent moniker that was given to me by the CEO of Napster, and then used in an article the other day by FIU. But I truly still godmother the metaverse in some ways in that evolution. I see so much interesting change coming when it comes to computing expanding, the web evolving. So yeah, it's still happening. It's still being worked on, whether we call it that or not. I mean, it's still kind of here. Not here yet. It's being built, but yeah.
Right. It's here and there at the same time.
It's here and there. Like, this is the thing. Like, Dmitri, like, I don't think we'll ever arrive there. Like, say, like, oh, it is January 1st, 2030. We have arrived, right? It's high-speed train all the way to the future. And it's not like you know exactly when you're going to get off the train. You're just eventually going to get there and be like, oh, it's here, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Let's break it down a little bit. What are the categories within this world? You've got the Robloxes and the Fortnites and the Minecrafts, and then you have the headsets. Some things are virtual reality. Some things are augmented reality. We've heard mixed reality. And are all these things interrelated? How do you think about this category?
So it's interesting because I think my thinking around the whole concept has evolved and changed, especially when I took a step back and really thought about like spatial computing as
Mm,
the evolution of computing, right? And what are the components of spatial computing? To me, spatial computing is an evolving 3D centric form of computing that at its core uses AI, computer vision, and extended reality technologies, as well as other emerging technologies, to seamlessly blend virtual experiences in someone's experience of the physical world, thus changing human to human communications and human computer interaction, etc. So just that is a way to say that computing is expanding into the physical world, right?
mhm,
And there are four components that I think are really important to talk about. There's software, right? That's where the Roblox and the Fortnites and the whatever it is that people are building on APV, on Apple Vision Pro, like that's where the software part is, right? There's the hardware, which right now, if we're going to get into it, I think is where there's going to be really interesting developments coming up. There's going to be the connectivity, right? And there's going to be data.
mm,
So I see those as the four components of spatial computing. So where does the metaverse live in that? The metaverse to me is the successor state to today's mobile internet. So it is the spatial web where a place where we're going to actually, the kind of the way that you're going to interact with some of this content will be through that spatial interface, right? So the spatial web it's not about like spatial computing to me is computing as a whole, and then you've got the evolution of the web from the mobile web into spatial web, right? Whether you use the word metaverse or not, right? So if you want to look at it that way from a metaverse perspective, and I've said this many times, to me, there's only an uppercase metaverse. There's only one successor state to today's mobile internet, but within that successor state, there are lowercase metaverses, if you wanted, and
mm.
that's like a Roblox and a Fortnite, et cetera, et cetera. So, um, just to kind of maybe have people understand a little bit better, but I've taken more of a macro view of spatial computing, its components, and the evolution of the web.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. If you say there's a capital M metaverse, and we don't have to spend too much time on the
Yeah,
term metaverse or whatever, you're sort of saying at some point these things will all be connected.
yeah. It will be all interconnected, th- with the caveat that there will be walled gardens and
Hmm.
there will be places that are open. Like there is an open metaverse, right? That will be kind of where you go from one place to like from one look, one metaverse to the other lowercase, right? From one to the other. But there will be also closed gardens, right? I
Yeah.
want people to understand that. I don't think that there's going to be all fully open. It'll be a combination, and sometimes you will need those walled gardens for one reason or another, whether it is sensitive data or medical records or whatever you have there. You might need to have those, or the companies want to prefer to remain walled gardens for one reason or another in their approach to it. But there is a component of open and closed.
Yeah, there was a moment with the Web3 metaverse definitions that were sort of, it felt like people were like trying to chisel in the blogs, like this is what it's going to be, this is what it is. And there was a moment where I was like, okay, are you saying that every Minecraft will have a portal to a Roblox, and every Roblox will have a portal to, Apple Vision Pro, or to, Quest or whatever? But I guess it's kind of similar to what already exists, right? You have
Yeah.
one world where the internet just is the internet, and
Hmm.
you can go from page to page and link to link. And then you have apps in the App Store
Yeah.
that aren't like that.
Yeah, or almost it's I think if you compare it to internet, right? Internet, you're flowing between multiple webs. Internet is something that is specifically for that company and only uses certain data, and it's not an external, it's not like you can just jump into anyone's internet, right?
Right.
I mean, you could if you're a hacker, if you're a great hacker, but I think that there's that kind of like difference there. And it's also the apps as well. But I do think we're moving more towards that appless world in some ways, especially as agentic AI kind of just starts to take over everything, spatial evolves. Yeah, like I feel like eventually move away from the app world per se. So
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out in the market.
yeah.
uh, and also, the other piece, just to clarify before we move on, what I'm hearing you say when I ask, like, what are all the categories, you're saying there, all of those components that create that sense of a spatial interaction, a spatial computing digital interaction.
So spatial computing as a computing platform, as a change in computing, when you're talking about the experiences, that can be multiple things, right?
Right.
But yeah, you are going to need a container to experience that in. hardware. You need some type of virtual software to create it or have that experience, be created in and use assets, etc. You are going to need some level of connectivity, whether it's 5G, 6G, or on edge or whatever it is, right? And then, there's going to be new data, like new data sets, new forms of data that are being used, whether it's 3D assets, whether it's spatial assets, etc. So even if you look at things right now, I was recently looking at a launch from Deloitte partnering with AWS to create something called Dream, which is I don't know what it stands for right now, but it's like digital reality asset management system. And basically what it is, it's a way to connect multimodal data and spatial intelligence data kind of in this new realm we're going into. So it's not just about, an experience. It's about all these types of data together, the connectivity, the hardware and the software to kind of create that new form of computing.
So you're saying like the sort of the assets that in a virtual world you or your avatar might interact with will have an interoperability between places because of that connectivity.
Potentially, depending on if they are in an open setting or a walled garden. In a walled garden, you might have multiple gardens where you'll go from one to the other. Like it's going to depend. I think for me, the fact that when we talk about the metaverse, we have in our minds really just double down on avatars and virtual worlds. That to me is a big component of the metaverse, but it is not the only one. To me personally, I believe that the holy grail of the metaverse is when you expand computing into the physical world, right? When you enable that contextual data layer that you're going to be able to see in front of the physical world and port those experiences into the physical world. That is to me the holy grail where this is going. Right, expanding computing into the physical world, expanding computing into everything you can see, touch, know, and feel. Right.
So you're saying I could be wearing a device, walking down the street in my real life neighborhood, drop off a digital hat on a bus stop, and a friend of mine could go pick it up and put it on.
Exactly. Yeah. And it'll probably be glasses, not VR headsets. I am, and I've said this a million times. I truly believe the future is more like Jarvis from the Iron Man Marvel movies, more Jarvis, like that AI that works with you, that co-creates, that you see through glasses, etc. Those are Edith glasses, but it's the Jarvis concept, right? Rather than Ready Player One, where you're in a virtual reality headset, fully immersed, and you're in a container because the physical world is so horrible. I think there's place for both. I think we're going to use more of that AI AR glasses in our day-to-day lives, and maybe when we come home and we want entertainment or we want to see our families or something, like we might use more of that immersiveness. But yeah, like I think that there's going to be basically what I'm telling you here, Dmitri, is that I see a huge renaissance when it comes to hardware, because that's how we're going to enable the next AI models that will be trained.
Got it. Okay. Speaking of entertainment, what do you see as the opportunity for entertainment in spatial computing? Where is true traction starting to take hold?
Look, here's the really interesting part. I think people are so obsessed with looking at Sora and looking at Google's VO, I think it's VO2 or whatever it's called, and looking at all these like text to video models and kind of tools. And they're like, okay, Hollywood's done, entertainment's done, music's done, or, whatever tool you're talking about. And I take a step back and I'm like, well, I think there's going to be room for I always say this, for the Kia and the Ferrari. And maybe the key of entertainment is going to be more generated by AI, and the Ferrari might be more of that physical presence where I actually go see a play or actually see a movie with actors where there's actually more of that craftsmanship of sorts, right? A human touch craftsmanship. So I see those two things. And despite what people are saying about, this is the end of entertainment and creators, I don't believe that. I truly do believe that some of these tools are going to hypercharge creativity, whether it's in music, in movies, entertainment, whatever. And I personally see a renaissance upon us on storytelling formats, because those who can tell the better stories are going to be the ones that are going to get the most, in my perspective, the ones that are going to get the most influence, the ones that are going to get the most attention, the ones that are going to make most money, because we're going to be there's going to be an onslaught of AI slop that is going to be low quality. So the better your story is going to be, the better your entertainment, your music, because music is storytelling, right? The better stories you can have, the better your content will be. So I see a renaissance approaching in creativity for artists of any kind, right? So yeah, I'm personally very excited about this future, despite what people might think. And I see some of the signs. Like I see some of these creatives starting to create content for the Apple Vision Pro, which, it's been a year since it came out and not as successful as some of us wanted it to be. But starting to see people use these spatial formats for storytelling, like Submerge, where you can see it, you can actually see it in the Apple Vision Pro. Like that to me is exciting. We're starting to see new data sets, new spatial type of data, new spatial forms of storytelling. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I think that that's where some of the younger generation, especially maybe younger Gen Z and Gen Alpha, who are builders and not only gamers, but they build worlds, I
Mhm.
think that they're going to have a bit of an advantage there.
Yeah, it seems like the Minecraft, Roblox, Fortnite world is the place where the most traction has kind of
Hmm.
come to be. It seems like the popular opinion is that like you said, the Apple Vision Pro is taking a long time, and I'm sure it's
Hmm.
because it's very expensive still to develop those experiences, both in terms of like financial expense, but also the time to just be creative in a new format. And the Quest just hasn't blown up the way that
Hmm.
I think Meta wanted it to. So would you agree that maybe those kind of like online gaming worlds are kind of the first indication of where the true traction is?
Yes, I think that there's a lot of traction in those worlds and it's proven, right? From an economics perspective, there's a lot happening there. I was one of the first, let's call it pioneers that actually worked for example, with companies like Walmart to start to think about new commerce models and how do you start to sell physical things in virtual worlds and enabling those kinds of things and how do you start to create fashion. Like the term direct to avatar, Ryan Gill from Crucible brought that term to me and he and I wrote an article and we coined the term out in the media.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think that there's traction there. What I will tell you is that we're about to see a giant like a giant movement in the hardware space
Hmm.
because and this is really important. There's several signals. The fact that, that Meta and we're recording this prior to the Super Bowl. The fact that Meta is investing heavily in ads for their Meta Ray-Ban AI glasses, right? They have the Meta Orion. They're doubling down on their hardware play. It's Meta's hardware era, is what I call it, right?
Hmm.
Then you also have OpenAI filing trademarks for VR headsets, AR glasses, smart jewelry, smart watches, humanoid robots. Why is this moment? Why is this like gold rush into hardware happening? Because you have large language models, right, that are trained on things that have been written or have already been created. Pretty soon, those models are going to run out of data, right? They're going to run out of data from the internet or whatever that it is that they're grabbing onto. In order for you to create the future of large action models, the future of large vision models, the future of large world models, you are going to eventually need real time data of the physical world,
Hmm.
right? Updatable in real time. So what these devices, this new hardware, whether it's AirPods with cameras, whether it's Meta's Ray-Ban AI glasses, eventually Orion, whether it's Apple Vision Pro, whatever it is, it's actually going to start scanning the physical world to put that computing layer, that contextual layer into the physical world. And that is the data that is going to train the newer models.
Hmm.
And those newer models are going to allow robots, are they going to allow virtual beings, they're going to allow holograms and all these sorts of things to navigate the world with us.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
So and I actually just wrote an article in Forbes about, I truly believe the United States currently leads in XR and spatial, and we should work together to keep it that way because I feel like that is where we have the moat. There is currently a moat on hardware. The
Hmm.
software moat, decimated after DeepSeek, after everything we're seeing. Like the moat in software creation is very tiny.
Hmm.
But in hardware, there is still a moat there because it's still hard to do hardware. The optics are hard. Will become easier? Yes. But right now there is a moat on hardware. And that's why all these companies, whether it's NVIDIA going into robots, whether it's OpenAI going into smart jewelry, whether it is Meta moving forward with Orion, that's where it's going. Because in order for you to train this, in order for us to have truly that autonomous, those autonomous vehicles and those robots moving there, even if you look at what Elon Musk just said about Tesla being a humanoid robot company,
Hmm.
not an EV company. Like the signals are all there. And how, in order for you to train the humanoid robots, and you have to have these data sets and you have to have data from the physical world updatable in real time.
Yeah. Wow, Cathy, you're doing just what I wanted. You're pushing me to think further into the future, which is awesome. We've got to take a quick break, but when we come back, I want to talk to you about digital goods because I know you have a lot of expertise there. We'll be right back.
Join the Music Tectonics community on Zoom February 26th at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. UK for the Marketing Toolbox for Music Tech Companies. Find out how tools like influencer marketing, public relations, crowdfunding, and pay-per-click ads work together for music and technology companies. We'll be joined by experts on these topics, so get your questions ready. Head over to musictectonics.com to register now and learn more about our free monthly online event series.
Okay, we're back. Like I said before the break, Cathy, this has been already awesome, just pushing me into the future. And I know that you have written and talked and done a lot of work around digital goods, fashion, objects. What's the state of digital goods in spatial computing? And I kind of already know your answer, but is this a passing fad or something that all kinds of commerce and brands will adopt over time?
It's funny because our friend Lee and myself, your friend Lee Keebler and my friend Lee Keebler, I host a podcast with Lee called Tech Magic on the Adweek Podcast Network. And we used to have this thing called Future or Fad where we talked about a theme and be like Future or Fad. Sometimes we agreed, sometimes we didn't agree. But I do think digital assets, not a fad, present and future. Even if you look at Europe and them enabling digital passports for physical goods, virtual assets becoming more and more important. Even if you look at the signals of where kids spend their money, right? And I share this story sometimes with my kids at Christmas being like, Mommy, what is Auntie so-and-so going to send us? And I'm like, oh, she's going to send you $40. And my son immediately makes a conversion to Roblox, which is a digital currency inside Roblox virtual world. He can't do that with euros or South African rand, but he knows exactly how much that is the value to him in the platform where he spends the most time in his social network, right? So there is this moment, right? Whether people want to not talk about it or not think about it, there is this virtual layer to the world that we're engaging in, whether it's in consoles, computers, et cetera, that eventually is going to expand into the physical world. So this is where I'm going to expand your thinking a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm having conversations with governments, with cities about virtual GDP. Like there is physical GDP that most of the economies depend on for growth, right? But that is limited. Physical GDP tends to be limited to a certain point. How much more can you grow, right? Once you enable that contextual layer or that virtual layer, you start to enable virtual GDP, right? Mm-hmm. So digital assets, digital as a commodity, I mean, that is kind of where we're going. So
I thought we were going to talk about fashion and digital things you could wear and digital jewelry and
happy to do that. It's just,
this is at the economic level, right?
Well, I do have a master's in international studies with a focus in economics, and it's been top of my mind lately. So yeah, like I think there's this really interesting virtual layer and economy that is being created. But I'm all for virtual fashion. Trust me.
For our Music Tectonics audience, I'm curious, and I might throw a few questions at you all at once, and you can pick which ones seem relevant here. But on the music side of things, will we continue to see concerts in these virtual worlds? That's been where a lot of us in the music industry have seen stuff take place. But also if we widen out to, say, the TikTok conversation, is there a social media takeover of spatial computing where we're not posting comments and videos, but just interacting synchronously in 3D, like you mentioned, one of your kids in Roblox? Will people buy virtual concert tickets in a scalable way? Is there some other digital music listening experience that will emerge? Help us paint a picture for the music heads. Like, how should we be thinking about spatial computing?
Absolutely. And I'm speaking here not on my economics hat. I'm going to speak here from actual experience. So one of the things that I have had the privilege of doing is actually producing virtual concerts in virtual worlds. So Roblox, for example, I was able for Walmart to produce Electric Fest. So I worked with Kane Brown, Youngblood, and Madison Beer to create this virtual concert. I worked with them on their virtual fashion, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm speaking from experience, in creating these virtual concerts. It's not easy to do. But yeah, I feel like creating these concerts is still hard. It's getting easier with AI. It's getting faster. Is it in real time? Not quite yet. And then also you might have a limited amount of people per instance sharing on in this virtual concert. So there's limitations there. That's all getting enabled and accelerated by AI. I think for artists, it's going to be really exciting. I'm really looking forward to the moment where you can actually hologram into these virtual worlds in real time and do these virtual concerts. Because at the end of the day, yeah, I would love to see Taylor Swift's Avatar, but I would actually love to see Taylor Swift actually performing inside those experiences, right? And there's been tests done. Like I've hologrammed into a few virtual worlds, but like for a very limited time. So yeah, like I feel like we are going to continue to see virtual concerts, whether it's avatar form or whether it's holographic. We're going to continue to see eventually people buying maybe more of those virtual concerts as ticket prices continue to skyrocket for the physical experience. Bringing that virtual experience to people is going to be important. I mean, if the Taylor Swift movie or the Beyonce movies have shown us anything, is that people do have an appetite for the virtual form of the concert.
Mm-hmm.
So enabling those virtual experiences will continue to be important. And then eventually, I think when we truly have spatial computing, you might be able to go to the stadium and see the singer live on stage, but you might be home and you might tap into that virtual ticket and you'll see the singer on your table in a hologram.
Yeah.
Right.
That I'm glad you said that, because I was just literally going to ask when you were talking earlier about kind of like you're leaning in on the augmented reality, the piece of where you're interacting with the real world and seeing digital objects in the real world. One of my ideas that I had a while back was when the hologram shows up on your kitchen table and you invite friends over for a one-time concert of whatever that big artist is, and your home becomes the venue and the destination.
Yeah.
That's when we've kind of gotten to a new virtual world. And
I think we're going to enable very special and unique personalized experiences. I don't know if you remember back in the day, maybe you do, but I think you do. MTV Unplugged. Do you remember like those were really special concerts?
Right.
Limited amount of audience, unplugged. I never went to one in physical form, but being there physically must have been amazing.
Yeah.
Right.
You kind of felt like you were there a little bit.
You felt like you were there, but imagining those were special, unique experiences of whether it was Mariah Carey, whoever was doing their unplugged. Imagine that, like when you can enable that through AI and through a lot of these things for the artists to create these personal sets for you. I think it's going to be a really exciting time for artists.
I got one more for you. Let me see if this adds up. Remember when Pokemon Go took off and everybody was running around neighborhoods, running into strangers, meeting people, sitting there kind of half looking at their phones, meeting new people at a public park or a fountain or whatever to collect whatever little beasts. What if, this is a what if, what if it was the same experience where you knew you needed to go to a certain place at a certain time outside in the real world, and then you saw a virtual concert of your favorite band, and it was happening in 50 cities at the same time, but everybody was getting together out there in the streets or in the parks and experiencing that. Is that what you mean?
That's what I mean. And trust me, I've pitched that idea in the past.
Yes, let's do it.
Yes. Okay. One day it'll happen, like I truly, I believe in making the impossible possible.
Nice.
And that's part of the work I do is really thinking up these crazy ideas and figuring out what do you actually need to make them happen? So
yeah, I have a question that's related to that, and then we'll wrap up with one broader question. What about 3D immersive creator tools? How will that manifest over time? What's coming into play? And I mean, we're seeing some in the music space. We're seeing some DJs, Tribe XR DJ stuff, or some music educational stuff where you don't have to have a piano to play the piano. But there's also the spatial audio where people are building things where you can move sound around with your hands. Where are things there, and what do you think's coming down the pike on that creator side of 3D?
Yeah, I think AI has democratized some of the tools, right? It's hypercharged creators. I'm a big believer in the creator economy, not influencer per se, like not the concept of I want to be an influencer or a YouTuber. No, the idea and the concept of creators, right? Where whatever it is that you're creating, the art form that you choose, I think that some of these tools have been democratized. So now more of us can create. They have augmented us. I feel like an augmented human, to be honest, because now like very limited coding skills, but here I am working with Claude to create apps. Like, did I have that on my bingo card? No, not really. So yeah, I feel like artists, creators, anyone that is a creative, if they use their creative powers, they become creators.
Yeah.
And the flood of tools at your disposal, at your fingertips, is amazing right now. So take advantage of that. Like my advice to anyone listening to this that is not creating or testing things, find a tool that you're excited about, something that you love creating, and start using it, right? This is about hypercharging your creativity.
Yeah, you've mentioned a couple. Are there any others that, like, if you're just getting started, that's like a so-called layperson could go and play with?
See, this is the thing for me. That's a personal preference, right? Because I feel like everyone's in different worlds, and I love perplexity, but your music loving crowd might not be like perplexity. Might sound pretty boring to them,
Yeah.
right? That's more of like a research tool. So yeah, I'm not as up to speed on the music ones, to be
Yeah, yeah,
honest. But
yeah.
I think find your niche, find your industry, start playing with the tools that could be of interest, and go create. I mean, and this is the thing. I think it's amazing to think about what a year and a half we were like thinking about prompt engineers and how much they were getting paid. Now I can have Claude, Anthropic's Claude, literally optimize my prompt for me. Like it does it. So I don't know. I'm really excited. But at the end of the day, I do think there needs to be human creating with you,
Yeah.
with the AI. Like a human
Yeah.
needs to create with the AI. You need to create with AI. That's what I meant, not human creating with you. Like I think that there needs to be that human creativity in the loop. And then the more the human creative is in it, the more it becomes craftsmanship. It becomes something that is unique,
Yeah.
right? It's almost like an Hermes bag. I'll give you this example. Why do people pay so much money for an Hermes bag, right? Because it is a status symbol, but also there's a level of craftsmanship that goes into creating one of these bags. You know what you're getting when you're buying an Hermes bag. Yeah, it is the status symbol, but why did it become that? Because it's so hard to make and so unique in the craftsmanship that goes into it. So I believe that there will be that. Well, yes, I can go buy a Workin, which is a Walmart Birkin, which exploded on Walmart, online. But the reality is that the people that are buying that would really want to buy the Birkin. So I think there's going to be both. There's going to be a lot of AI slop, but there's going to be opportunities for highly creative. And the better your storytelling is, the better that's going to get.
So I like that. So I asked for tools. You gave back a mindset, which is totally legit.
Yeah.
The mindset, try stuff, figure out what works for the space you're in, and remember the human component, because that curatorial piece is really where the creativity stays. I've said it on the podcast before. A lot of stuff that comes from AI, it's all derivative, right? It's all trained on something else. So where do you get the new stuff? You got to get the new stuff from inside, right? You got to get it from your brain and your soul and that human piece. So that's great. All right, let's wrap up with one last question, Cathy. What other trends in spatial computing and immersive technology should we keep an eye on? We've covered a lot. Can you think of anything else that you could push us give us one last push into the future?
I'll give you two. And one is about spatial computing, one is not related to spatial computing. So definitely spatial intelligence. So we as humans, when we're babies, when we're little, we learn spatial intelligence. It's what allows us to understand how to go up and down the stairs. What allows us to understand if we push the glass, it's going to fall. It's going to spill with water, whatever it's inside. So that concept is something that robots are starting to learn more. Virtual beings, all these sorts of holograms, it's all going to be, spatial intelligence will be incredibly important when you start to think about the future of navigating the world in this contextual layer with robots and cars and holograms and virtual beings and all these sorts of things. So keep your eye out for spatial intelligence. I think it's a high area of growth. And with spatial intelligence will come spatial audio that is also geolocated specifically to a location, etc. So keep your eyes on that. On the other front, what I want people, creatives, to start to think about, and it's about space, not spatial space, actually outer space, is one of the things that I see coming is that new space, that new race for space that is taking off right now, that is starting. I think there's going to be really interesting opportunities in the future for creatives and for space commerce. I don't want to even call it space marketing because that gets a bad rap, but like space commerce. Space marketing. Yeah, people
You're
are like,
already building the billboards.
I don't want to billboards in space. No, it's not about that. But I think there's going to be really interesting space commerce. Connectivity from space is going to enable us to do amazing things powered by AI, all these sorts of things. So keep your eyes on space. Keep your eyes on what's happening in that world. And then also the other thing to keep tabs on is Generation Alpha. So Generation Alpha are the kids of millennials. I have 3 Gen Alpha kids. And Generation Beta just started being born January 1st of this year. This generation, especially Gen Alpha and Gen Beta, are not going to limit their career prospects to the physical world. And I see this already with my children.
Oh my.
Okay. My children, I've asked my son, who's a Roblox developer, and he's like, hey, mom, if I could be a developer, if I could do virtual stuff, I would. And then I've asked my daughter, who's now 14, when she was 11, she told me one day, I said, what do you want to be? She said, I want to be a lunar food scientist. Lunar food scientist. Well, we will if we go to the moon, if we have a base on the moon, if we have people on the moon, we will need lunar food science because we'll need to eat on the moon. So what I want to talk about here is that This younger generation does not limit their perspectives of career and life only to the physical world. They're thinking virtual, physical, and off planet. And I think that for a lot of the listeners here that are probably millennials and up, or maybe older Gen Z, is changing your mindset and understanding that for them, this is a very different future than the one you're envisioning.
Damn, I guess I asked for it and you did it. You just messed up my head.
Happy to do it.
You can check her out on Tech Magic through the Adweek podcast network. You should follow her on LinkedIn. I do. And she's got a lot of great stuff, what she's up to. See her travels there. She mentioned her co-host on the podcast, Lee Keebler. You heard him a year ago on this podcast on an episode called Looking into the Mixed Reality Mirror with Lee Keebler. Cathy Hackl, godmother of space, maybe? I don't Thank you so much. It's been great having you, Cathy.
Thank you.
Startup Sessions.
Hi, this is James Hill. I'm the co-founder of EverFM. I started EverFM to solve the problem of static, unchanging audio recordings. I wanted to bring recordings to life, or you might say bring them back to life, because songs are alive. They live and they breathe and they change. Music is a dynamic art form. It needs a dynamic medium to do it justice. And that's exactly what we've built with EverFM. The way we do that is by adding probability to the mix. In a conventional mix, you have EQ, you have compression and levels, but you can't assign a probability to a sound. How loud a sound is, that's one thing, but how likely or unlikely a sound is, that's a whole new ballgame. And there are tons of exciting creative possibilities and a lot of fun, I think, to be had by the end user, the fan who gets to curate a remix that is personalized to them, something that really resonates with them and is still an authentic expression of the artist's work. That's really important. I first came across this problem when I went into the studio with my band, Champagne Weather. We play a sort of semi-improvised style of minimalist folk music, and the songs are intended to be different with every performance. And it was a real bummer to have to record a single definitive version when that's really not the spirit of the project at all. So we looked around for a solution. We didn't find anything that worked, so we started building, because I think there are tons of artists and fans who are underserved by traditional static recording. You think of improvisers in any genre, jazzers, hip-hop artists, DJs, spoken word artists, storytellers. So many artists can benefit from a recording format that allows songs to reassemble themselves with every listen. The thing that nobody else was doing is creating a dynamic audio format first, but that works in the browser and that allows fans to create one-click remixes on the fly without skipping a beat, and then to collect their favorite renditions as one-of-one art pieces. So connecting the concept to the technology, to the customer experience and the user flow, nobody was doing that whole package. Even though there's always been a desire, I think, to break free from conventional, unchanging recordings. You can think of double-threaded vinyl records, for example, bands releasing their stems to fans. Kanye West recently replaced some of his songs on Spotify with new versions. The desire to do something like this has been around for a long time, but nobody had pulled all the threads together in one place the way we have with EverFM. We provide value to superfans and adventurous listeners, I would say, by empowering them to interact and influence the music that they love in a way that they never could before, and to capture some of those ephemeral moments as unique and meaningful keepsakes. We also empower artists with a new kind of audio canvas. It's an infinite, ever-changing format, and we're only just getting started exploring the possibilities of this new world. I'm especially proud of the fact that all of the output on Ever FM is deeply connected to the artist's vision. We don't use generative AI at all. All of the sounds and the rules for how the song changes, they're all created by the artist as an extension of their composition. So I think it's the best of both worlds. We create this multiverse of musical possibilities, but at the same time, we create meaningful output that has the artist's stamp on it. It has the artist's intent and human touch really infused into it. My biggest challenge has been, I would say, timing, not rushing the process of development, but at the same time, setting deadlines and sticking to them, or at least trying to. The next thing we're going to do is the fun stuff. We're going to find more artists who are really excited about this new medium and who want to explore it with us. I'm thinking of artists for whom innovation in music is really central to their brand and their vision. My dream is to work with artists who I really admire, who have inspired me over the years. People like Bjork and Beck and Radiohead, and just dreaming out loud here, Brian Eno, Stevie Wonder, Daniel Lanois, Jacob Collier, Kimbra, Imogen Heap. The list goes on. I know that we're at a stage now where we can approach these and many other artists with a great product that they can get really excited about.
Thanks for listening to Music Tectonics. If you like what you hear, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. We have new episodes for you every week. Did you know we do free monthly online events that you, our lovely podcast listeners, can join? Find out more at musictectonics.com. And while you're there, look for the latest about our annual conference and sign up for our newsletter to get updates. Everything we do explores the seismic shifts that shake up music and technology, the way the Earth's tectonic plates cause quakes and make mountains. Connect with Music Tectonics on Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. That's my favorite platform. Connect with me, Dmitri Vitsa, if you can spell it. We'll be back again next week, if not sooner.
You're listening to Music Tectonics.